Welcome to the Web3 podcast. I'm your host, Travis Rosser, and I'm so excited you're here to learn more about Web3 and how it's going to change your business. Hey, thank you for coming back to the Web3 show presented by Onemint. Today, again, I have the founder of Onemint, Greg Marcellesi. Thank you, Greg, for coming on today.
Thank you, Travis. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. I think our first episode went really good, and I'm excited to talk some more about this stuff and just explore. And, I shot a trailer episode the other day, and I really mentioned that I feel like you and I had these great conversations. And so why not start recording those? I think today is going to be one of those type of episodes.
Awesome.
Let's
do it.
All right. So today I really want to dig into deep. What is an NFT? So why don't we start with you defining, as someone that's in the Web3 space, how would you define NFT?
Yeah. So I think the definition is NFT stands for non-fungible token, but that doesn't really mean anything to someone who doesn't understand it. And what it basically means is you're owning something that's unique. There's a single version of it. And that record of you owning that unique version is stored on the blockchain. That's what it means. So it's about uniqueness and ownership that's immutable, and that information is stored on the blockchain. That's what it means.
So when did you first hear about NFTs? Like in your career, when were you like, oh, this is interesting?
So it was never mentioned in my work setup. So I've worked at Amazon and Facebook, and it was never a technology that I worked with or I was mentioned. It was just out of curiosity and hearing about it in the news, on Twitter, and things like that, how I got curious about it. And I was just curious about the technology, and I just wanted to understand it and see how it works, basically. And that's how I started learning about it and building Onemint, basically. Just as I learned stuff, I built what I learned, basically.
Yeah, I remember the first time it really got on my radar was when the artist Beeple, the digital artist, when he had that sale. I think it was at Sotheby's. It was like $69 million. And I had seen his stuff before, but then I saw that and I was like, wow, this is crazy. This something that's digital. And then, back then, people still say this today. Well, isn't it just a JPEG? Someone can just steal it. Like, why is an NFT more than just a JPEG?
Yeah, it's because the NFT itself is not a JPEG. The NFT is the record on the blockchain. The image itself is just linked to that NFT. So there's a visual representation of that record on the blockchain, but the image itself is not the NFT.
Yeah, see, that's interesting, because that is the hang up, is it's not really a JPEG and it's not really artwork, even though right now artwork is one of the best ways to use an NFT. It's really about, what happens in this world of blockchain that a lot of us have no idea what it is, but maybe you can talk about that. Like, I know that every time you create an NFT, you have to do something called minting. So maybe talk about, what does minting even mean? I know that has to then be tied to a smart contract, and then the smart contract is then stored out on the blockchain. Like, maybe take us through the technology of it a little bit, kind of for dummies, if you will.
Yeah. So every project needs to have its own smart contract. And the smart contract is like its own mini logic/database for your own specific project, where records are stored and where logic is built specifically for your use case of your collection, your project, or your company. So that's what it is, and that's why you need engineers behind it to write those smart contracts and understand the constraints around them. So when you purchase an NFT, that actually means, well, the term is minting. And basically what that means is that you're writing for the first time a record on the blockchain, and that's called minting. So you're becoming the first owner of that specific token. So that's what minting means. So that record is stored on the smart contract itself, and it's tied to your wallet because you minted it. So now you're the owner of that token, basically. So that's what it is.
And I
And
think,
when you, and
go ahead.
the last step is, people don't really understand that step. They think they need to go to OpenSea first to buy it for the first time or sell it, which is not really the case. The very first step is minting, which happens directly on the smart contract. And what OpenSea is a marketplace. So it's like secondary sales. So you're exchanging something that's already been minted. And that only happens after you actually mint the NFT.
Yeah, we'll talk about OpenSea in a minute because I think the resale value, which is really cool, is one of the other great features. But ownership, I think that's something that's very unique. The fact that like historical ownership can be tracked and traced. So when someone buys an NFT or mints an NFT, that then goes on the blockchain and it's in record, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's different than Web2 companies is that if you, let's say, create an account, then the company knows you created an account and they have the record. But when you mint an NFT, that record is public. So anyone can see that you're the owner of that NFT, and anyone can build applications using other people's smart contracts. So that's why you see people building stuff around Bored Apes, even though they're not the Bored Ape project themselves, for example, and things like that.
So is that how that works? That is interesting because as I was looking at a lot of the top NFT collections, you mentioned Bored Apes, and then there's Crypto Punks, and there's so many of these collections that became so massive. And then, like you said, they even like on top of them or collabs or partnerships. I think Adidas has made, over 50 million. I don't know if that's the exact number, doing collabs with other of these collections. Does every collection have a smart contract, or does every time it mints, is it a new smart contract? Like, this is kind of getting in the weeds for dummies, but that's something I don't
There's
understand.
one smart contract for the entire collection. It's
Okay, so
not
that's how it works.
a smart contract per token.
Now, what is stored on the smart contract? Like besides ownership, like things like the rarity and like a little bit about the collection, is some of that is that where that data goes?
No. So the amount of data that you store on the blockchain needs to be really small because storage is actually really expensive, and expensive is translated into gas. So the more data you store, the more gas you'll need to spend to actually mint your NFT or transfer it or any interaction that you do. So the minimum data has to be stored on chain, basically.
I got it.
And a lot of the data is stored off chain. Like, for example, the image is not stored on the blockchain. The attributes are not stored on chain. So attributes are my NFT owns a red hat, blue socks, things like that. Those are stored typically on a decentralized storage called IPFS, which is storage decentralized. Basically, if you go down, then other people can like store that information so it doesn't get lost. So the best practice is to use IPFS, but there are other alternatives to store that data.
Yeah, every one of these to me is like business opportunities. Every time you say, well, this costs too much or this is limited, I think as an entrepreneur, especially me as a software entrepreneur, I'm always thinking, oh wow, there's a business opportunity there. Let's talk about gas fees. Like gas fees are expensive. Like I've bought some stuff over on OpenSea, and then I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and relist this, and then they show me the gas fees. I'm like, oh, forget about it. Tell me about gas fees. Why are they expensive, and what are things that you guys have done at Onemint? I know to find ways to make it kind of cheaper. That because I know there's other technology. We don't have to just use Ethereum, which seems to be the most expensive way to mint.
Yeah, so the Ethereum network runs on basically nodes that are owned by random people. And every time you need to store data or read data from the blockchain, basically the data is spread across thousands of computers. And people need incentive to run those computers. And that's what gas is. So when you do an operation, you pay gas, and that gas is then transferred to the nodes that run the transaction. So that's what it is. And the cost comes from multiple things. So the first one is the complexity of the transaction. So how much work needs to run on the computer to run the transaction, and the amount of data that you store through that transaction as well will increase the gas required to run the transaction. So that's the first part. And the second part is congestion of the network. So the more congested the network is, the higher the fees are. So there's a correlation between congestion and gas, and there's a multiplier that's applied, basically. So that's how it works.
And what are some other networks I know that are a lot cheaper that are now being used to do this? I know you guys have some other options. What are the
There's
other?
a bunch of L2 layers that exist. I think the biggest one is Polygon, but there's Avalanche and others. And basically the way it works is that they work on top of the Ethereum network. And when you run a transaction on an L2 layer, they have their own blockchain, but every couple of minutes they sync their state to Ethereum and vice versa. This way they can process a lot more transactions than if you were writing directly to Ethereum.
The blockchain, is the blockchain one, like, is it one place or is there multiple blockchains? Like when I mint something to the blockchain, this is something I've always wondered. Is it multiple places?
So there's one Ethereum blockchain. So it's one big ocean, basically.
So it really is one big giant database, some world database that's stored, like you said, on nodes. So an actual individual has identified that I'm going to store part of this database. Kind of like back in the old days, like a big BitTorrent type thing where everybody was sharing a little bit.
Yeah,
it's very interesting. This is something that I think a lot of people talk about, but are afraid maybe to even ask that question right there. But I really want to get to the bottom of kind of how this stuff works from a business perspective, and let's talk about that next. What are some things you see, some new ways that people are using NFTs? I know you guys have new stuff where you can merge some of the NFTs, which I think is like the dynamic NFTs.
Yes. So what we're building is dynamic NFTs. Is basically, as we said, one NFT is tied to one image, but that image itself is fixed. You can't really change it. And we're thinking about how can we leverage what we built, and what we built is the best NFT generator. And that allows us to do things that other cannot. So basically, when you have your first NFT, you can swap items, or you can introduce new items for your NFT. And with our software, we have the technology to like regenerate the image associated with that NFT. So that's one of the stuff we're working on. But other things, I'm currently thinking about how to build loyalty with our customers, or to make them more belong into our community. So one thing we want to do is, the Boy Scout scarf, and you get all those patches.
Of course, yes.
So we want to do, as you progress to the app. So for example, after you generate your first NFT collection, we can airdrop you like a badge. The first time you create your smart contract, we can airdrop you another badge and things like that. So you feel that you're evolving and you get something in return. And when you do that, those badges can be then dynamically attached to your scarf, I guess, to build that sense of belonging that you're working towards something. So that's something as well that we're working on that's related to dynamic NFTs. But the other thing is like subscriptions in general for businesses. like how that works and the limitations of blockchain. Like, how can I have my Netflix subscription on the blockchain, for example? It's not really possible, unfortunately, because when you pay with cards, you set it and you forget it, and every month you're billed automatically. And
Yeah.
that mechanism doesn't work with blockchain. We can't like automate transaction on a recurring basis. So what I'm saying right now is that you can set expiration. So you can buy a subscription for a year or for 30 days, and then you need to renew it. But there's that manual step to come back in to renew the subscription. That's a bit annoying from a business perspective.
Yeah. This is, let me go back to the gamification thing. I think that is incredible. I think having gamification, especially when it comes to like using software, when it comes to using apps, is pretty amazing. Would that be like, would that actually gain value? Like that would be an NFT, and then I over time could earn more and more, and then you could even give more benefits and more utility to the, you know, the owner of that NFT. And I think that's probably the next cool thing is about utility, like the things that the NFT can do. Like you were saying, maybe it could handle the Netflix subscription, or maybe, you know, it could be used for tickets for an event. Like what are some cool like utilities you think, or you see in the future? I mean, I love the idea of subscription, and like the fact that an NFT can also manage membership into something that you have, like whether it's a site, like back in my days of running Kajabi basically was a membership site that people could sell access to. What are some other cool utilities that you see coming, especially with your technology, since you guys are kind of building this stuff in the back end?
Yeah. So it's very early days. So I think it's to be defined. Um, but what I'm seeing more and more is gated content. So to access data, access Discord, access courses, classes, things like that are gated by owning an NFT, or it can be gated by owning an NFT and a special traits, for example. So you have only 10 special traits, and only those people get access to that extra thing, for example. That's the first one. And I think rarity in general has value. I think one thing I was talking with my team the other day is, or they were sharing, like Fortnite accounts. You know, you can buy skins, and people sell their Fortnite accounts for thousands of dollars because those accounts have those old skins that can't be bought anymore. And I think the same principle will apply to NFTs. That's what it's built for, basically.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of what I was thinking when you were saying how you could earn badges over time. I think in the video game world, in the world where you've invested a lot of time, it really becomes a digital asset that could be resellable. Like, and we've talked about this, how some of the dynamic stuff you guys are doing, it's perfect for the gaming world where you could run this on the back end. And as you're building your character and you're adding more things to it, and maybe it's
Yeah.
earning more and more value, you really could resell that. Like, how far away do you think we are before video games are doing that? In fact, they probably already are kind of doing that. Like, is that kind of the next phase of NFTs, is really being deep into gaming?
I think it's going to be one category. I think it's still, as we said during last episode, we're still day one of NFTs. I think our brain thinks about the most obvious thing, and the most obvious is gaming. Um, but there are others, and I think through the next year, through the next months, other use cases will come up, and we'll be mind blown and thinking, how did I miss this?
Yeah, no, it's crazy because, like I said, people are only thinking about JPEGs and stuff, but it's more about like when they first created the printing press, you know. And I know it's like one of the first things was, I think, the Bible was printed.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you never would have thought of all the things that obviously paper has done. And we
Yeah.
think about the first phases of the internet. We had no idea what the internet can do, and now you can play a full video game on the internet. I know I have the Google Stadia, which is completely
Uh-huh.
cloud based gaming, and I don't think we even have seen what is going to happen. But I know that the more you dig into NFTs and how smart contracts work and how the blockchain works, you realize that this will disrupt a lot of businesses. I mean, there are some businesses that will completely change because of this technology. And I think one of the barriers, well, I think the first barrier is just not understanding it. You know, even as we're talking a couple times, I'm getting lost trying to understand exactly how you're connecting all those dots. That's probably the first part. And I think the next part is the difficulty of working with the technology. I mean, there until the last year or so, there hasn't been companies like Onemint that are doing all the heavy lifting, you know, behind the scenes. And I think just the existence of Onemint is going to create new opportunities and new businesses and industries we've never even thought of. So I'm excited to think about that. Let's talk about like when someone launches a collection. Let's say someone goes and does a collection right now. What are some of the things they have to do? Like obviously they would use Onemint to create multiple versions. You know, then they'd have to. Do you mint it the first time you launch it? Let's say I want to do 1,000, you know, JPEGs of something. Do I mint it that first time? Like, how does that work? I go to Onemint, I sign up.
So the first step to launching an NFT collection is the art. So you need to create the art yourself or with an artist, and you need to design it in a specific way. Basically, each trait is its own layer. So you have an image for the head, an image for the body. And basically what the software does, it stacks all those layers together to produce a final image. And the software will make sure that there are no duplicates. It will respect your rarity and your rules and things like that. So one, you need to have the art generated and the metadata associated with the art. Once you have that, the next step is creating the smart contract. So you configure like the name, the symbol, how many NFTs you'll have, things like that. When you do that, we generate like a unique smart contract for you. So the code is unique to your projects. And then through the app, you'll be able to deploy it. And once the contract is deployed in itself, it's empty. It's an empty shell. There's nothing, there's no data stored yet. But once it's created, that's when you can build application on top of it. And like the application is like interacting with the contract. And typically that's like the mint button. And what the mint button does is like, it checks how much is each NFT. Is the sale open? Am I allowed to mint NFTs or not? And things like that. So all that logic is built in the button itself. And when you mint, it creates the transaction for you to own that NFT. So that's how it works.
And so I know a lot of people have different strategies. One of the things are whitelisting. Explain what whitelisting is and how are some ways that a marketer or a business owner could whitelist during a launch.
Yeah, so a lot of projects, what they do, they create like a private sale. And basically, the sale is open to only a selected selected amount of wallets. So what they do is they build community before the project launch for their project through Discord and Twitter. And as an example, the most active users, they reached out, they shared their wallet, and now they're stored on the whitelist. And when you open the sale, like you provide the list of wallets that can mint like early. That information is stored on the blockchain. When they mint, they check, is he allowed to mint or not? And that's like a gating for people to be able to mint. And then when they want to open to the public, they lift that gate and then anyone can mint.
So it's like an early access list. I know that every time I've tried to get myself whitelisted, I don't seem to quite get it right. Like sometimes it works perfectly. Sometimes I go into Discord and do this and this, and I never get it just right. To explain, like I know that the next thing that people use is for community and communication is Discord. What are some good tips you can give someone to be careful? Because Discord seems to be kind of the Wild West. I know there's a lot of people when you join a Discord, it can be a lot of scammers. What are some tips you would give someone using Discord for the first time?
My tip is to talk to someone that knows what they're doing and used to doing that. I'm not the one who set up our Discord, for example. I know there's a lot of security you can put in place, bot checks and things like that. So I'm not an expert, so I won't give my opinion there. My opinion is talk to
That's
someone
fair.
that knows
I,
more.
I think I think from a user's perspective, some of the things I would warn you is if someone's trying to direct message you inside of Discord with some kind of
Yeah.
offer, be very careful. It seems that people will join these Discord groups and then they'll say, "Oh, the minting's happening over here," and they'll have sometimes a fake website. And so that would be my warning just from a user. But you're right, we're not experts, but be careful because unfortunately the crypto world, the NFT world is so new and there's so many small little mistakes. Like another thing is wallets. Like you need to learn about wallets and try to find a wallet that is very simple to use. Like I use MetaMask. And like what other wallets would you recommend someone to use for the first time that they're buying an NFT?
I think I recommend MetaMask as well. I think it's the most popular, the one you'll find the most resources around. So I would go with that. That's what I use, for example.
And I would say with wallets, same thing. Do a lot of research because you can really mess up your wallet. You can give away information and someone can take your wallet. So be very careful. I think the history of wallets with crypto and NFT has been sometimes comical, sometimes very tragic. I know there was at the very beginning, people had all their crypto on little thumb drives and then people would lose those thumb drives. I mean, I wonder how much value is out there, in the ether, in the blockchain that just is unowned because either someone lost access to the wallet or it was
It's like the guy that has like 50 million stored on a hard drive that he put in the trash and he's been looking for it for years. I see
that's
that in the
that's
news every couple months.
that's exactly one of the things that can happen with this new way of transacting value. And I think let's end with that. Let's talk about value because really this is a transaction of value. And I see this going into other industries. I think the fact that you can track ownership, it it most likely will go into the real estate industry very soon. The fact that I could see who owns my home or a home I'm going to purchase, and I could do that transaction. Like, what are some other industries do you see it going into that maybe someone isn't seeing right now?
I don't know. Real estate is one I'm thinking. Ticketing is another one. But I think eventually it will trickle down to everything. I think in a couple of years it will be everywhere.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I'm really focused on my business, so I'm very in my bubble thinking
I
about
know.
the use cases. So sometimes I don't take the time to step back and look at the whole industry as a whole.
I
So
totally
hard to
understand. And
say.
what you guys are doing is really incredible. Because like I said earlier, you've eliminated the technical barrier. So even someone like myself can get into this space, build a collection, or use NFTs in a new way because I don't have to worry about minting. I don't have to worry about smart contracts or storage. Like there's so many things that before this was extremely difficult. So it's exciting to see how much you guys are disrupting, and I can't wait to see the future. Like as we come back, we're like, I had no idea that someone could make an NFT for this. So
Yeah, and the industry is moving so fast. Like a year ago, there was like we didn't exist. There was no tool. Now there's a lot of tools that allows you to deploy smart contracts. So it's moving really, really quickly, and that's really exciting.
it is. It's exciting. Like I know that as we're recording these, we're almost coming up to your 1 year since you launched
Yeah,
NFT generator. So isn't it crazy? I mean, when you first launched that, what do you think? Like, what were your expectations? What did you hope would happen?
I had zero expectations. Literally, like I always had like ideas of apps to build, and sometimes I build them, sometimes I don't. And this one is, well, I think it was the first time that I saw an opportunity where nothing existed. And I got really excited. built the first version in 2 or 3 weeks and launched it. And yeah, I think that's the only motivation I had, like build something that doesn't exist. That's what I wanted to do. If I sell a couple here and there, great. But that wasn't really what I was thinking. I was just focused on building something. And yeah.
Just go out there and create. You get inspiration, go create it. I think if you're listening to this, you should do the same thing. Go on Onemint and create that idea, because the world and technology in our lives always moves forward when we act on those dreams that we have. And I'm just glad you did it, because if you hadn't have done it, we wouldn't be here talking. And
yeah, me too.
It was worth it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been really good. I feel like we've dug into NFTs a little bit. We've hopefully answered some questions for people that didn't understand, and maybe even opened up new possibilities. So thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning into the Web3 show. Make sure you come back every single week, where we really dive in deep to what is the Web3 world and how is it going to affect your business. And of course, as always, it's presented by Onemint. My name is Travis. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. We'll see you next time. This episode of the Web3 show is brought to you by Onemint. Make sure you visit onemint.io to see all the amazing technology they're developing.